You remember your childhood bedroom, the color of the walls, where the window was, maybe a specific afternoon, the light coming through, a smell, a sound. It feels solid, real, like a photograph stored somewhere safe inside your head. It isn't. That memory has been altered. Every single time you've recalled it, your brain has quietly rewritten it, added details that weren't there, removed ones that were, borrowed pieces from photographs, from stories other people told you, from things you saw later in life, and stitched into the past. The memory you just pictured, you've never actually seen the original. Not once. Not after the first time it was stored. And neuroscience has known this for decades. We just don't talk about it because the implications are deeply uncomfortable. Let's talk about it. The filing cabinet that doesn't exist. Most people think memory works like a filing cabinet. You have an experience. Your brain files it away. When you need it, you open the drawer, pull out the file, read it, put it back. That is not what happens. Not even close. In the early 1970s, a cognitive psychologist at the University of California named Elizabeth Loftus began running experiments that would eventually change the entire field of memory science. Her question was simple: can a memory be altered after the fact? In one of her most famous studies, she showed participants footage of a car accident. Then she asked them a question. Half the group was asked, how fast were the cars going when they hit each other? The other half was asked, how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other? One word. That's all that changed. The group that heard smashed estimated speeds nearly 30% higher than the group that heard hit. And when questioned a week later, the smashed group was significantly more likely to report seeing broken glass at the scene. There was no broken glass. Loftus had implanted a false detail using a single word spoken after the event. The memory had been rewritten without the participants ever knowing. They weren't lying. They were remembering accurately, from their perspective, something that had never happened. This wasn't a quirk. It wasn't rare. It was how memory works for every human being on the planet, including you. Reconsolidation. Here's the part that changes everything. For most of the 20th century, scientists believed that once a memory was stored, it was stable, fixed. The only question was whether you could access it, not whether it had changed. Then in 2000, neuroscientist Kareem Nader at McGill University ran an experiment that shattered that assumption. Nader trained rats to fear a specific sound by pairing it with a mild electric shock. Classic fear conditioning. The memory was fully formed and stable. Then he did something no one had tried before. When the rats recalled the memory when the sound was played and the fear response activated, he administered a drug that blocked the brain's ability to restore the memory after retrieval. The rats forgot. Not everything, not permanently, but the specific memory that had just been recalled was gone, disrupted, because the act of remembering it had briefly made it unstable, and the drug had prevented it from being restored. What Nader had discovered was something called reconsolidation. Every time you recall a memory, it doesn't stay in the filing cabinet. It gets pulled out, becomes briefly malleable like wet clay, and then gets refiled. And every time it gets refiled, it can be changed. Your brain is not preserving the past. It is reconstructing it every single time. The memory you have of your best childhood birthday isn't the original recording. It's a copy of a copy of a copy. Each version is influenced by your current mood, by things you've learned since, by stories you've been told, by the person you've become. You have never once remembered anything exactly as it happened. The false memory problem, this is where it stops being abstract. Elizabeth Loftus didn't stop at car accidents. In the 1990s, she wanted to know something more disturbing. Could you implant an entirely false memory? Not just a distorted detail, a complete event that never happened? She recruited volunteers and, with the help of their family members, told them that as a child, they had once gotten lost in a shopping mall. It had never happened. But the family members confirmed the story, added details, made it feel real. Within weeks, 25% of participants not only believed the false memory, they began elaborating on it, adding sensory details, describing the stranger who found them, feeling the emotional residue of an experience that had never occurred. 1 in 4. False memory, built from nothing but suggestion and social confirmation. And it gets worse. In subsequent studies, Loftus and her colleagues successfully implanted memories of being attacked by an animal, nearly drowning, and witnessing demonic possession as a child. All false. All eventually believed with total conviction. The people weren't weak-minded. They weren't unstable. They were normal people with normal brains, doing exactly what human memory is designed to do: fill in gaps, seek coherence, and trust the people around them. Your brain doesn't care whether a memory is accurate. It cares whether the story is complete. Why your brain does this at this point, you might be wondering, what is wrong with us? Nothing. This is a feature, not a bug. And it makes perfect sense once you understand what memory is actually for. Memory didn't evolve to give you an accurate record of the past. It evolved to help you survive the future. What matters to a brain trying to keep you alive isn't whether you remember the exact color of a predator you saw 3 years ago. What matters is whether you remember that it was dangerous, where it was, and how to avoid it. The emotional core of the memory, the survival, relevant detail. Everything else, the precise facts, the exact sequence, the sensory details that scaffolding your brain constructs to make the story feel coherent and accessible. And if the scaffolding needs a few pieces filled in, your brain fills them in, automatically, unconsciously, with whatever material is available. This is why eyewitness testimony is notoriously unreliable, why two people who experience the same event can remember it completely differently and both be absolutely certain they're right, why your memory of an argument with someone you love has almost certainly been subtly rewritten to make you slightly more reasonable and then slightly more wrong. Memory is not a record. It is a story your brain tells you about yourself. And like all stories, it gets edited every time it's retold. Huan Mapka. So what does this mean for you? It means the version of yourself you carry around in your head, the story of where you came from, what happened to you, who did what has been quietly revised thousands of times without your knowledge or consent. Not by anyone else, by you. Every time you remembered something painful and felt it get a little easier, your brain was softening the edges. Every time you remembered something wonderful and it felt even better in hindsight, your brain was adding gold leaf. Every time you remembered an argument and you couldn't understand how the other person saw it so differently, they weren't wrong. You were both remembering the version your brains had constructed. Elizabeth Loftus spent 50 years studying this. She's testified in hundreds of legal cases. She's watched innocent people go to prison on the basis of memories that felt real, but weren't. And her conclusion, after a lifetime of this work, was not that memory is useless or broken. It was something stranger. Memory, she said, is more like imagination than recording, more creative act than retrieval. You are not a camera that captured your life. You are a storyteller who has been retelling it, rewriting it, making it make sense your whole life. The person you remember being may not be exactly who you were. The people you remember may not have done exactly what you think they did. But in a way, the story you've constructed, the edited, embellished, subtly revised version, that's the one you actually lived. And maybe that's not something to be afraid of. Maybe that's just what it means to be human,